Discover 4 most mind-blowing vehicles that have been lost in the depths of automotive history. These rare gems are so obscure, they'll leave even the most die-hard car lovers scratching their heads. We'll uncover the secrets behind these extraordinary rides and explore why they've remained hidden for so long. Trust me, you'll be amazed when you see what these cars have to offer. The Jensen FF, a car that was way ahead of its time. This rare beauty has an intriguing story behind it and a bunch of innovative features that made it stand out from other cars of its era. So, buckle up and let's dive into the history, design, and why the Jensen FF is still a unique and collectible car today. It all started with a British car company called Jensen Motors. They were known for making stylish and high-performance vehicles. The FF, which stands for Ferguson Formula, had a groundbreaking four-wheel drive system that was developed by Ferguson Research Limited. Back in the late 1960s, most cars were rear-wheel drive, and four-wheel drive was usually only found in off-road vehicles. Jensen Motors wanted to change that by putting a four-wheel drive system in a Grand Tourer, pushing the limits of what was technically possible at the time. The mastermind behind the Ferguson formula was a guy named Harry Ferguson. He wanted to create a vehicle that had amazing handling and was super safe. His technology promised better traction on different road surfaces and improved stability in bad weather. Jensen Motors saw how awesome this technology could be and teamed up with Ferguson Research Limited to create the Jensen FF. Even though it was expensive and technically challenging, Jensen's management was excited about the project. The FF was developed alongside another Jensen car called the Interceptor. They shared a lot of the same design, but the FF had the special four-wheel drive system. To make this work, they had to make some big changes to the chassis, like extending the wheelbase and changing the engine mounts to fit all the extra drivetrain parts. When the FF made its big debut at the 1966 Earl's Court Motor Show, it got a lot of attention and made people curious, even though it didn't actually start being produced until later. Now, let's talk about the Jensen FF's design. It was both innovative and stylish, with a look that was totally 1960s but also had some seriously advanced technology. The standout feature was definitely the full-time four-wheel drive system, which gave the car incredible traction and stability that was unheard of for a passenger car back then. This system was kind of like a sneak peek at the modern all-wheel drive systems we see in cars today, showing just how ahead of its time the FF really was. Another cool feature was the anti-lock braking system, ABS, which came from aviation and racing technology. The Dunlop Maxxaret ABS was made to stop the wheels from locking up during hard braking, making the car safer and easier to control. This was a game changer at the time, and would later become a standard safety feature in most vehicles. The FF also had a unique look with twin diagonal air vents on the front wings, which made it different from the Interceptor. The longer wheelbase didn't just make room for the four-wheel drive system, it also made the car ride smoother and feel more stable. Inside, the FF was pure luxury, with a high-quality interior that had front seat belts, a tachometer, and map pockets for both comfort and practicality. Even though the FF was pretty heavy, it could still perform impressively. It had a big 6.3-liter V8 engine from Chrysler that delivered strong acceleration and a top speed that could keep up with other high-performance cars of its time. When you put together the power, advanced drivetrain, and braking technology, driving the Jensen FF was a totally unique experience. Now, you might be wondering, if it was so groundbreaking, then why isn't it popular? And why you don't see many Jensen FFs around? Well, that's because they didn't make a whole lot of them. Only about 320 units were made between 1966 and 1971, and a lot of those cars didn't survive until today because of problems like rust and mechanical issues. Part of the reason they made so few was that it was really expensive to manufacture, and the car was pretty complex, which made it pricey to produce and buy. The FF's technical complexity also led to some reliability problems, which didn't help its commercial success. The unique four-wheel drive system and ABS were innovative, but they hadn't been fully perfected for mass production. This meant the car needed frequent maintenance and had mechanical failures sometimes, which made potential buyers think twice. Despite these challenges, the FF's technological advancements got a lot of attention and respect in the car world. securing its place in history as a groundbreaking vehicle. These days, the Jensen FF is a highly prized collectible among car enthusiasts. Its rarity and historical significance make it a valuable addition to any collection. Restored models can sell for big bucks at auctions, showing just how desirable they are and the innovative spirit they represent. The FF's combination of luxury, performance, and cutting-edge technology still captures the hearts of car lovers everywhere. The Goliath 1100, later known as the Hansa 1100, is a fascinating car that was made by Goliath Work Borgward and Company, a part of the Borgward Group from 1957 to 1961. This car is a rare find, and it tells an interesting story about the German car industry after World War II. It shows how smaller car companies were trying to be innovative and creative, but also had a tough time competing in a market that was changing quickly. Goliath started out in 1928 making three-wheeler trucks that were practical and affordable for people after World War I. In 1931, they made their first passenger car called the Pionnier, which had 3 wheels and a small one-cylinder engine. This was a big step for Goliath as they moved from making just work vehicles to cars for regular people. After World War II, Goliath had to start over like many other car companies in Europe. They decided to focus on making cars with 4 wheels, which is what people wanted more of at the time. In 1950, they came out with the Goliath GP 700, which had a special 2-stroke engine that was cooled by water. It was also one of the first cars to use direct fuel injection from Bosch, which was a really advanced technology back then. In 1957, Goliath introduced the 1100 model to replace the GP 900, which was a larger version of the GP 700. The new car had a more powerful 4-stroke engine with 4 cylinders arranged in a flat shape. It also had a more modern look. They showed it off at the Geneva Motor Show, and people noticed the improved front grille and other new design features. The car sold well at first, but Goliath quickly realized they needed to make it stand out even more from their older models if they wanted to get more customers interested. The Goliath 1100 came in different styles, like a 2-door sedan, a 3-door wagon, and a coupe. This gave buyers different options, from practical family cars to sportier looks. The car also had front-wheel drive, which wasn't common then. This gave it better grip and handling, especially on wet or slippery roads. One of the cool things about the Goliath 1100 was its advanced mechanical design. The 1.1 liter flat-4 engine could make 40 horsepower in the regular version and 55 horsepower in the fancy Luxus model. The Luxus could go as fast as 84 miles per hour. The car also had a gearbox where all the gears were synchronized, which made shifting gears a lot smoother than in most other cars at the time. Inside, the Goliath 1100 was designed to be comfortable and practical. It had a roomy cabin with comfy seats and a pretty advanced dashboard for its time. In 1958, they changed the name to Hansa 1100 to give it a fresh image and attract buyers who wanted a more upscale car. They made small changes to the design, like adding a stepped chrome strip on the side and rear fins to make it look more modern and stylish. Even with these changes, the car had a hard time selling well, partly because there was a lot of competition and the company was having money problems. Now, there are a few reasons why the 1960 Goliath 1100 is so rare today. First, they didn't make that many of them. Only about 35,000 1100s were built before the Borgward Group went out of business in 1961. That means there just weren't a lot of these cars out there for people to buy, so finding one now is pretty rare. Another reason is that the car had complicated engineering that made it hard to maintain. The advanced features, like front-wheel drive and the flat-4 engine, were cool, but also made the car more expensive and tricky to fix. A lot of owners decided it was easier to get rid of the car rather than pay for costly repairs, so even fewer of them survived over time. Lastly, changing the name from Goliath to Hansa also made things confusing for buyers. They weren't sure about the identity and reliability of the car, which hurt sales. Plus, other car companies like Ford and Opel had models that cost about the same, but were more well-known, so it was tough for the Goliath 1100 to really compete. And when the Borgward Group went bankrupt in 1961, it meant there was no more support or parts being made for the Goliath 1100. This made it even harder for owners to keep their cars running, and a lot of them ended up being scrapped over the years. Nowadays, the few Goliath 1100s that are still around are treasured by collectors and classic car fans who appreciate the history and unique engineering behind them. The 1982 Lotus Eclat is a hidden gem in the world of British sports cars. It all started back in 1975 when Lotus decided to create a more practical version of their earlier model, the Lotus Elite. They came up with the Eclat, which had a cool fastback body style that gave it more storage space in the back, making it a sports car that you could actually use for more than just weekend joyrides. Now let's take a step back and look at how the Eclat came to be. In the mid-1970s, Lotus was looking to expand their lineup and attract a wider audience. They already had the Elite, but they needed something that was a bit more versatile. That's where the Eclat came in, with its combination of sports car performance and grand tourer practicality. The Eclat was heavily influenced by Lotus's racing background. They used a lightweight fiberglass body and a backbone chassis, which helped keep the weight down and made the car handle like a dream. However, early models did have some issues with rust, especially in the rear chassis. Lotus fixed this in later models, including the 1982 versions, by using galvanized chassis instead. Over the years, the Eclat got some pretty sweet upgrades and improvements. In the late 1970s, they introduced a 2.2 liter engine known as the Type 912, which bumped up the power to around 160 horsepower. The Eclat also had some pretty advanced suspension systems for its time, making it a blast to drive on twisty roads and even on the track. Now, let's dive into the technical details of the 1982 Lotus Eclat. Under the hood, you'd find that 2.2 liter inline-4 engine, which was a big step up from the earlier 2.0 liter unit. It was paired with a 5-speed manual gearbox, which was a favorite among driving enthusiasts for its precise control and sporty feel. One of the things that made the Eclat stand out was its lightweight construction. The fiberglass body was strong but also super light, which helped with the car's overall performance and handling. The backbone chassis was another cool feature, providing a solid structure that made the car feel really stable and planted in the corners. Just keep in mind that those early models could rust if you weren't careful, especially in damp weather. Inside the Eclat, you'd find a cockpit that was all about the driver. The controls were easy to reach, and the whole setup was designed to emphasize the car's sporty nature. The 2+2 seating arrangement meant that you could technically fit 2 people in the back, but let's be real, those seats were better suited for extra luggage or the occasional passenger. In 1981, Lotus introduced the Riviera Edition, which added some luxury features like a removable roof panel, air conditioning, a vented hood, and a rear spoiler. These extras made the Riviera a really unique and desirable version of the Eclat. Now, when it comes to rarity, the 1982 Lotus Eclat, especially the Riviera Edition, is considered an extremely rare car. It all comes down to the limited production numbers. Throughout its entire run from 1975 to 1982, Lotus only made around 1,500 Eclats in total. And when it comes to the Riviera Edition, they only produced 223 units. That's a really small number, and it was partly because Lotus was going through some financial struggles during that time, which made it harder for them to pump out a ton of cars. There were a few other reasons why the Eclat didn't sell in huge numbers. It was competing in a niche market against some pretty big names like Porsche and Jaguar. And while the Eclat had a unique blend of performance and practicality, it was a tough sell. Plus, those rust issues and the high cost of maintenance scared off some potential buyers. As a result, the Eclat remained a low-volume model, which is a big part of why it's so rare today. But it's not just the rarity that makes the Eclat special. The car's design and engineering really set it apart from other British sports cars of its time. The lightweight construction, advanced suspension, and sporty handling were all ahead of the curve, making the Eclat a dream car for driving enthusiasts. And if you can get your hands on a Riviera Edition with its limited production and unique features, you've got a real collector's item on your hands. The 1937 Adler 2.5 liter, also known as the Type 10, is an incredible car that really stands out in automotive history. Let's take a closer look at what makes this vehicle so special. First, let's talk about the company behind the car. Adler. Based in Frankfurt, Germany, Adler started out making bicycles in the late 1800s. They later moved on to producing motorcycles and typewriters, which they became really well known for. In 1900, Adler decided to get into the car business, and their first model was inspired by Renault and had a Dédian engine. By 1910, they were only making cars with 4-cylinder engines, and some of these engines were as big as 7.4 liters. Even Kaiser Wilhelm II, the German emperor, was a customer of Adler, which shows just how high quality and prestigious their cars were at the time. In the 1930s, Adler became famous for their innovative designs. The Adler Trumpf, which came out in 1932, was one of the first cars to have front-wheel drive and independent suspension on all 4 wheels, way before the Citroën Traction Avant. This car also had rack and pinion steering, proving that Adler was all about using the latest and greatest automotive technology. Adler's focus on aerodynamics reached its peak with the 1937 Adler 2.5 liter, which was unveiled at the Berlin Motor Show. This car represented a big change in how cars were designed, with an emphasis on streamlined shapes and efficiency, showing how important aerodynamics had become in the world of car engineering. Now, let's get into the details of the Adler 2.5 liter. Under the hood, you'll find a 2,494cc straight-six engine that puts out 58 horsepower in the standard version and 80 horsepower in the sport model. This engine is positioned lengthwise in the car and uses a side valve setup with a chain-driven camshaft. The engine, along with the radiator and gearbox, is placed far forward in the car, which helps balance the weight and makes the car more stable to drive. The car's power goes to the rear wheels through a 4-speed manual transmission, and the top 3 gears have synchromesh. The Adler 2.5 liter has a welded box structure chassis with a floor platform, which makes it strong but still lightweight. The suspension system includes wishbones and quarter elliptical springs in the front, and a swing axle with a transverse leaf spring and tie rods in the back. This setup, combined with hydraulic shock absorbers and drum brakes on all 4 wheels, makes for a comfortable and controlled ride. The car's steering system, made by ZF, uses the RAW system, which was really advanced for its time and helped make the car handle precisely. The body of this Adler is made of steel and has a streamlined fastback design with a super low drag coefficient of 0.36, which was amazing for the time. The car's aerodynamic shape, including the covered rear wheels, often called spats, helped reduce air resistance and improve fuel efficiency. The car also had a large steel sunroof that could be opened to give you that open-air driving feeling without making the body less rigid. The design also included wide-beam headlights and a new dashboard with easier-to-read instruments, making it both practical and good-looking. So why is the Adler 2.5 liter such a rare car? Well, for one thing, they only made 5,295 of them between 1937 and 1940. When World War II started, production was heavily disrupted because resources were needed for the war effort, and a lot of the cars that were made didn't survive the war. The unique design features, like the advanced aerodynamics and innovative suspension system, also make the Adler 2.5 liter stand out from other cars of its time, which adds to its rarity. Another reason the Adler 2.5 liter is so rare is its historical importance and the cutting-edge technology it had for its era. The combination of a streamlined body, a powerful engine, and modern suspension and braking systems made it a technologically advanced car that was ahead of its time. Even though it was technically brilliant, the car didn't become a huge commercial success, which also limited how many were made and sold. Nowadays, surviving examples of the Adler 2.5 liter are highly sought after by collectors. You'll often see these cars at classic car shows, and people really want them because of their unique design and engineering. The few models that are left, especially the convertible versions, are considered valuable collector's items.